Hi class, so we've got a general review for z-scores. You've got three different distributions. We've got a sample where we would have a mean and a standard deviation. We've got a population with a mean and standard deviation. And then we have our distribution of sample means, which is part of chapter 8. When we're working through this one, we would know our mean for our sample. We would know our population mean, which is also the estimated mean for the distribution, and we would know our population standard deviation. We would know the sample size for that distribution of sample means. All right, so when we work through Z, you first need to identify which distribution are you being asked about, and part of that is going to come from what information is given to you. The second, you would need to figure out, well, what is it that I'm asking for? Is it asking for that percentile rank of someone? So this would be that score value, which could be X for a sample or a population distribution. It could be a mean for the distribution of sample means. All right, so then I would figure out what I would need. Maybe it's asking for the probability of those above that score. Again, I'd shade and look for that. The third part would be going to the z-score calculator, the website. All right, so we're going to go through and do a couple of different problems for this. All right, so I have this worksheet for us to practice from, and this is your opportunity to kind of fill in the responses. So I'm going to work through or talk about a number of these, and then you'll have an opportunity to work through and submit this as an assignment in Canvas. And so this first one, we are given information. There's a sample of 275 undergrads. They had an exam score average of 80.9 and a standard deviation of 7.7. All right, so this example is talking about one sample. All right, and then I'm asked 3 questions about an X. All right, so all of these have to do with X. This also has X. When I'm using my z-score, it would be X equals 74. This would be X equals 83. And the only challenge on this one is asking an extra layer of how many students, which you would need to first get that percentile and then calculate times that 275. All right, so in this case, since it is a sample, I would be using this z-score. All right, and it's just a case of plugging and chugging. So if I were to find this, this is asking for a percentile rank. I know the average is 80, which is where your z-score is 0, so it's going to be somewhere around there. And percentile rank, I'm going to shade below. So then I would go through and solve the 83 minus the 80.9 over the 7.7. I'd get my z-score, and then I'd go to the z-score calculator, all right, and fill that in based on wanting this shade. This one is the proper probability of scoring 86 or better. So or better, all right, I'm asking for greater than. So again, if I was drawing, I know 86 is here, but I'm wanting this area now, all right? And so then again, I can solve for my z. All right, and then this one is for students that score less than. So again, the shading is gonna be below. And again, I know where my z-score of 0 is that 80.9. So again, my 74 is going to be somewhere below there. So I'm going to want that area. And again, I'd get that z-score. And this one I would expect to be a negative z-score because again, my raw score is below the mean. Once I get these z-scores, again, I'm going to use the z-score calculator to look those up, right? I'm going to have a part 2 of that video reviewing that as well. All right, so this one is similar to how we've learned Z before. And again, our other Z-score within, when you're given an X, if you're given population information, it would just be this formula, right? But in this case, this example had sample data. I then gave, the reason we're being introduced to chapter 8 is because we're moving towards theorems and information that are moving us towards inferential statistics. So I gave you some little plug there, and then I give us a new problem. This new problem is connected with chapter 8. All right, with chapter 8, you're going to see I have a population mean. All right, I have a standard deviation for the population. I have an n for that sample size for the distribution of the sampling means. And then I have means. So all of these in here are means. This is that same setup we did in problem 1, but we now have to use our new z-score for distribution of the sample means, which is the m minus the mu over, now this is that new estimated standard error. Right, so that's that symbol. Okay, so we're going to be, again, plugging and chugging the information. All right, and the other thing that I'm having you do is to compare, this is asking for standard error is this guy. You're going to compare the standard error when you're, which is this formula. All right, when you have n equals 81, you're going to calculate it, and then you're going to calculate it for n equals 16. All right. Let me go ahead and walk us through that calculations. And again, I'll have a part 2 video that again shows, again, reminding us about the website. So all of these, when it's asking for probability, percentile rank, again, those are going to want to be in proportion or percentages. If I asked about proportions, then you'd actually do the decimal version of it. So on this one, we're going to have z equals, I have 73 minus my 100 over, and then I've got to do my fancier information. So I'm at 15 over the square root of 81. This guy is going to be the same, but now I have 119 minus 100 over my 15 over the square root of 81. And this guy is that 108. All right, so I'd be solving those, and then again, for this guy, I'm going to calculate a standard error when I have n equals 81, and then when I have n equals 4. And then I would add in, how does that relate to that central limit, right? There's a tenet in the central limit that relates to that. All right, so again, you would plug in and work through this yourselves. Again, the second part of each one of these is getting those percentile ranks, or those areas of below or above. So this was 73. So I'm going to get that area. I know it's below the mean because the mean's 100 for a z-score 0. And this guy is above. So I'm going to want that area. And then this is scoring 108. All right, so that's going to be behind. All right, and that's, again, these shaded area are going to help me move towards that z-score calculator.